Final Fantasy XIII, eh? Where to begin? Well, I suppose I should start with the good stuff. The game is pretty. Well, that was short. Let's move on to the bad stuff. I'm just joking. I'll be a little more forgiving on the title. Final Fantasy XIII really is the definition of a slow burn, but the game does end up getting pretty good. I'll move on to why that's a bad thing later, but for right now we're going to go ahead and focus on the good stuff. Oop, hang on, there's my data log. Like I said before, the game is pretty. Unfortunately, it is presentation over function, but the game is, beautiful. The story is rather imaginative. I'll spare you the details and spoilers, but I can tell you that it's likely a story that you haven't really heard anywhere else before. And the music, well, it's not annoying. Hey, another data log entry. Hang on. Alright, on to the bad stuff. And I'm sorry, Final Fantasy, but there's a lot of it. First and foremost, probably the most horrible thing is the combat system. First off, many enemies have an area of effect attack that covers a large radius. The problem with this is you can't physically move your characters. That's a really big problem whenever you know an enemy is getting ready to launch an attack that will kill all three of your allies if they're grouped together, and you can't move them manually. Another problem is animations. If you're going to have an active time battle system, you need to have a quick animation to make sure that they play it as soon as their active time battle gauge is full. So say you're playing the medic class of your group. You can't just wait for the active time battle gauge to fill up. You have to wait for it to fill up, and then your character has to turn towards its target and then play a rather lengthy heal animation sometimes. Although it doesn't seem all that lengthy, only being about a second or so, whenever you have an active time battle system, those seconds matter. Another problem with the combat system is the fact that there's something called auto attack. It basically means you can just spam the A button and kill everything on screen to the best of the AI's ability. Granted, there is the occasional screw up by the AI, but for the most part it knows exactly what to do and does pretty much exactly what you would do if you were playing. So that makes most battles just boil down to you just tapping the auto attack button and the game just sort of plays itself out. Ugh. Alright then, Datalog, let's go ahead and get to you. First, you're actually kind of impressed with the game and how to keep track of all the information in this handy-dandy thing called the Datalog. It's basically an encyclopedia of all things Final Fantasy XIII. Well, the game's story lives and dies by this thing. Be prepared to stop and read every 10 minutes or so in the story to make sure that you're all caught up. And don't think you can just skim on it either. I highly recommend you read it every single time it says it, because if you don't, you can very well end up being very lost in the story and not knowing what the hell is going on. I just think it's really kind of piss poor whenever a developer, instead of going through the trouble of building it into the narrative, they basically make you have assigned reading. And I realize it's strange to bitch about reading in an RPG, but in all honesty, if I'm going to be doing reading, I want it to be worked into the story. I don't want it to be some kind of side encyclopedia where I have to do my homework. And that brings me on to the paradigm shift problem. For those of you not familiar with the game, paradigms are basically the AI and moveset that you have whenever you are in battle. This is essentially just changing the classes of you and your followers. The problem with this is the first time you change paradigms, it takes actually a good 3 or so seconds to change. During that time, you're not able to move or act or anything. And this is a problem because, again, it's an active time battle system. Your character can be attacked and easily die. And it's really, really annoying that they'll have to sort of dance around like friggin' Charlie's Angels and pose just to change classes. Another problem with the paradigm system is you have to change the class of everybody in your party, not just one. So if you're perfectly happy with your leader being a commando and the secondary guy being a Ravager, but you want the third one to switch to a healing class, tough luck. Unless you have a paradigm set up specifically with those classes, all characters in the party are going to have to switch classes in order to get the job done. Another complaint is that the combat system strongly depends on and revolves around the fact that you're going to have 3 people in your party. Well, another big frustration is the fact that for the first 25 hours to 30 hours of the game, you only have 2 people in your party. And this makes setting up a strategy rather difficult sometimes. Another thing is, grinding is kind of pointless. Most of the time in Final Fantasy games, it's really nice to be able to just run into a difficult battle and then go somewhere else and grind for a little bit, and then come back and just totally dominate your opponent. In fact, one of the enjoyments of the Final Fantasy series is knowing you can completely blow your opponents away with just a few hours of mindless grinding. But not in Final Fantasy XIII's case. It uses an upgrade system similar to the Sphere Grid in Final Fantasy X. Only this time, you're actually limited to how far you can go whenever you're at certain parts of the story. Say the commando has 5 levels. Well, you're only able to go to level 2 in the first part of the game. And then once you reach another major milestone of the plot, there will be another level unlocked. Another big problem you may have heard me mention before is that the game doesn't really get started until about 25 or 30 hours in. It's incredibly linear the entire time and with no room for side quests or veering off the beaten path. Now, I usually don't have a problem with a game that takes a little while to get started. If it makes the rest of the experience that much better, then I'm all for it. But at that 25 or 30 hour mark, it feels like the game just got started not in a great way, but this is what I wanted all along way. So even though I am okay with games that are a little slow to get started but get great later, 25 to 30 hours is asking a bit too much. And I actually do have a theory on why this happened. I really think that it was actually disc size constraint. Without trying to give away too many spoilers, there are a few things in the third disc of the 360 version that are a little too big, that would actually take up a very large chunk of the disc. Well, since it spans multiple discs on the 360, if they were to allow you to access these things on every disc, then there really wouldn't be much room left over on each disc. Therefore, the story would either be shorter or we would get uglier visuals. So my theory is the main reason why the game really didn't get started until the third disc of the 360 version is simply a matter of Blu-ray versus DVD. So there you have it. Think that's all the bad stuff to complain about? Not really. This is going to be my minor annoyances section of the review. Final Fantasy really is a story of a camel with 1,000 annoying straws laying on its back. The inventory's new item system just simply doesn't work. Whenever you pick up an item that's new, it's supposed to make a little flag in your inventory with an exclamation point saying, "Go here, you've got a new item." Well, it doesn't work right. It's any time you pick up an item. So say I've got potion. I pick up another potion. Hey, you've got a new potion. Come look at it. That's not exactly something important enough to warrant the player's attention, but for some odd reason Final Fantasy XIII thinks it's important enough to say, hey, you've got a new potion, come take a look. Probably one of the most embarrassing things that Final Fantasy XIII does is its summons. Each character gets their own specific summon. And if it were just the summons, that would be great, fine. I love summons in all the Final Fantasy games. But they all transform, and I'm not even joking. They all transform into cars and motorcycles and horses. It kind of reminds me of those cheap plastic toys that you'd see when you were a kid. You know, the ones where Spider-Man had a car that transformed into a motorcycle that shot action plastic missiles. Another problem is that money's hard to come by. You don't get money for fighting in this game. In other Final Fantasies, when you fought a battle, you get some money afterwards. Well, not in Final Fantasy XIII. You get spoils. What you're supposed to do to get money is to sell these spoils and treasures that you come across during your travels. The game never tells you this, except for the occasional rare item that says, can be sold for a premium. Another one is that items don't show up on the minimap until you've already got them. Tell me, what's the point of that? Who wants to know where an item was? You want to know where an item is so you can get it. Like I mentioned before, it would be really nice to have the paradigms on the D-pad for quick switching rather than having to pull up a separate menu and select one. Another annoying thing about the game is that you set up custom paradigms for each group that you have. Well, if a character is added or removed from a group, all the paradigms that you toiled over to make sure they were strategically perfect are gone. Even if you switch back to the exact same combination of characters, they are gone. You will have to make all of them all over again. Minor annoyance number 57. If there's no spoils after a battle, then why does it still show the spoils screen? It's the same thing as whenever I select a potion in battle, why does it make me select everybody as an option? If it just automatically selects everybody and I don't have a choice otherwise, then why not just cast the damn thing? Again, it's an active time battle system. I need every split second I can. And that's it for the minor annoyances. In the end, the game is okay. To be honest, the game really doesn't feel like it gets started until about 25 to 30 hours in. The only people I would suggest this game to are people who are willing to put in the 60-80 hours required to complete the game in its entirety. For those looking for side quest content, it is there, but you'll have to go looking for it. The game does an absolutely horrible job of guiding you to anything beyond the main plot. But for those of you willing to go on the scavenger hunt, you will find a rewarding experience. I really don't think this game would have earned much attention had it not had the Final Fantasy name on it. But it does, and therefore people will play it. All in all, the game is alright at best. Those of you who are big fans of the series, I suggest you go ahead and give it a try. But I have no doubt that it will not top your list of series favorites. For those of you who are not the biggest Final Fantasy fans, you can likely pass altogether. There are better RPGs for your buck. Go play Lost Odyssey, for instance. 2 out of 5 stars. Son of a bitch.